Chapter 531 Dream Tournament. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Some time later, Sunny saw Rain out, watched as she walked away, and then calmly closed the door. As soon as she did, however, his placid expression evaporated. What the hell? How come I didn't know about this? Hastily taking out his communicator, he accessed the network and searched for information about the Dream Tournament. A few minutes later, he sat down on a chair, a little stunned. What is this insanity? Sunny knew, of course, that dreamscape duels were a popular form of entertainment, both among the awakened, who participated in them, and among the mundane humans, who followed their favorite duelists and created boisterous fan clubs. However, he had no idea that even the great clans paid attention to the illusory game. Apparently, the creator of the dreamscape held a big tournament each year, and each year, one of the great clans, either Valor, Song, or Night, sponsored the prize pool. Participants who managed to achieve good results were able to receive cash prizes, memories, and even echoes. The rewards for the finalists were especially generous, and came directly from the great clan's armory. They were also of the ascended rank. Sunny trembled, his eyes burning with avarice. No, think about it rationally. The great clans were obviously after a straightforward goal: keep an eye on the rising talents among the unaffiliated awakened. But did it matter? Sunny had already failed to keep his fake persona under the radar. Anyone who paid attention to Dreamscape had at least heard about Mongrel. What was there to even think about? Free goodies. That's what it is. Completely forgetting about his previous disdain for the tournament, Sunny got completely absorbed by the prospect of receiving memories free of charge. He was almost drooling. And if free memories weren't enough, there was another reason for why this tournament now seemed very alluring to him. For the past months, Sunny had participated in hundreds of duels in various arenas. His goal was to absorb as many styles as possible, to reinforce the foundation of Shadow Dance and make it more efficient. This way, he hoped to achieve the next level of mastery over his elusive battle art. Not all battle styles were made the same. Some were simple and straightforward, while others were complex and unique. The more unique a style was, the harder it was for Sunny to gain insight into its principles. It was not like he had a magical ability to peer into the very essence of a style. This ability of his was more or less mundane, based on his own talent, mastery, and sensitivity to shadows. So, he had been working diligently to create a sizable library of simpler styles, which would in turn improve his capacity to discern the patterns of more complicated ones with sufficient speed. After all styles were constructed out of the same basic elements. The more basic patterns he knew, the easier it was to understand various styles on the fly. However, the quality of his opponents in the Dreamscape arenas was not that high, for obvious reasons. True talents had better things to do than play games. Most of them also belonged to legacy clans, who lived by a different set of rules. In the world of legacies, strength and talent were not something to boast about. Renown only served to make the enemy aware of your weaknesses. In that regard, hidden tigers of the legacy clans were very much like Sunny, remaining in the shadows until it was time to deliver a lethal strike. That was why his progress had stalled lately. These days, the only worthy opponents he could find were a few rare eccentrics and a rare gem here and there, not nearly enough to satiate Mongrel's hunger for a variety of distinct battle styles. What's more, at the highest levels of awakened battle skill, styles were not only about physical movements and mindset anymore. They weaved unique patterns of essence control into the technique, too, which Sunny couldn't perceive and was only able to infer from indirect clues. Sadly, he wasn't exposed to a lot of opponents practicing such styles in the arenas. The tournament was going to change that, however. With the valuable prizes added into the mix, people who would usually not waste time in the Dreamscape were bound to show up, lured by the scent of rare memories and echoes. Even people from lesser legacy clans would, without a doubt, be tempted to participate. A powerful ascended weapon or armor could change their lives, too. So, Sunny could kill two birds with one stone. Compete for these prizes and enrich his library of styles at the same time. Forget it. I'd be a fool to miss this chance. Even knowing what a headache it would be to bring even more exposure to Mongrel, Sunny couldn't let such an opportunity go. Plus, he had some free time while Effie and Kai were traveling to the Chained Isles. Scrolling through the feed, he started reading everything he could find about the upcoming tournament. Several days later, Sunny locked the door of his house, descended into the basement, and approached the Dreamscape pod. As soon as he entered the fake black void, the familiar pleasant voice greeted him. "Welcome back to the Dreamscape, Challenger Mongrel." Sunny didn't pay attention to it and briefly looked at his status. Mongrel, victories. 813-inch defeats. 0-inch. With a quiet sneer, he turned to several images floating in the boundless darkness in front of him. These were the arenas he had access to, and by now, there were significantly more of them than had been there at the start. Today, however, the list looked different. The images of the arenas were pushed to the sides, and a new one appeared in the very middle. It was completely white, with a golden shape of an olive wreath depicted beneath two shining words. Dream Tournament. Sunny lingered for a moment, summoned the mantle of the underworld and Weaver's mask, and then stepped toward the image. Chapter 532 Ancient Forest. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The golden wreath disappeared, and Sunny found himself facing two new images. On one, a knight in a suit of polished armor was depicted holding a bloodied sword. On the other, a warrior in an archaic armor was shown standing back to back with the knight, a slender huntress drawing her bow behind them. The pleasant voice announced, "Challenger, select your dream." Several words appeared above the images. "Dream of glory, dream of camaraderie. What's with the bells and whistles?" Sunny rolled his eyes. The choice was very simple. One image was going to send him into the individual competition, while the other was meant for cohorts. The Dream Tournament was basically two separate tournaments happening at the same time. This way, those awakened who didn't have combat aspects could also participate and earn rewards. It was a good system. Sunny had no intention of searching for a cohort, so he simply chose the image of the lonely knight and closed his eyes. Unlike the usual Dreamscape duels, the tournament included various battle modes. They were also broadcasted and happened at a schedule, so he had to wait for the first qualifier round to start. Standing in the darkness, Sunny couldn't help but feel a little excited. Challenger. Draw your weapon and prepare. Only the best will survive. A bright light suddenly shone from above, and he found himself in the middle of a lush forest. All around him, ancient trees swayed lightly, their leaves rustling in the gentle wind. Some distance away, a tranquil lake glistened in the sunlight, and from its clear waters, a breathtakingly beautiful castle rose into the sky. The castle was built out of gray stone and was as large as a city, its ancient walls scarred by 1,000 sieges that it had withstood. Still, those scars could not diminish the ethereal beauty of the great fortress. The arena was vast, and encompassed all of the forest. There was no other awakened near Sunny, and for a good reason. The qualifying rounds of the Dream Tournament were held in the form of a grand battle royale. 1,000 challengers were sent into a large environment, and only the last one standing would be allowed to move on. Depending on their performance, a few more people could also gain entry into the tournament, but the only concrete method to qualify was to be the sole survivor. This was a necessary measure implemented in the last few years because of the sheer amount of participants. Arranging and broadcasting so many individual duels was not very practical, or profitable, especially considering that most of these awakened were not very skilled. The Battle Royale was meant to weed out the weak and create an exciting show for the viewers. Sunny knew this, of course, because he had done some research in the past couple of days. He didn't need the research to recognize where he was, though. Wow, it's even more beautiful in real life. Who didn't know Bastion? This year, Clan Valor sponsored the tournament, so the arena was designed to resemble the seat of their power, Great Bastion, one of the 3 most populous human citadels in the dream realm. Sunny had never been to the ancient castle, but its image was ubiquitous in popular culture. He recognized it instantly. So, this must be the Lake of Bones, then. And all around him was the ancient, cursed forest that Anvil of Valor had destroyed. These days, of course, the landscape surrounding Bastion was very different. Instead of a lush forest, it was surrounded by a sea of ash and charred remains of the dreaded Titan, with human forts built here and there to repel powerful nightmare creatures from wandering close to the citadel. But thanks to the dreamscape, Sunny got to enjoy the way this place had looked before, vibrant and pristine. The only difference was that there was no harrowing darkness hiding behind the veil of false tranquility. Ah! How nice! Compared to the chained isles, it was a nice change of pace. Just as he thought that, the voice of the dreamscape suddenly announced. Challenger Mongrel number 19 was eliminated. Sunny tilted his head. Well, that was fast. Also, what's up with that alias? Shaking his head, he commanded the Soul Serpent to assume the form of the Odachi and calmly headed deeper into the forest. It was time to start hunting. On the official broadcast channel, the image of an eliminated player was shown briefly. Then, a rather light-hearted voice spoke. What a kill! Just a few seconds after the start, and we already have a casualty. Let's all wish Mongrel number 19 better luck next year. An avatar of an exquisitely handsome young man appeared in the corner of the broadcast. Glancing at the camera with a bright smile, he continued. And so, the 5th annual Dream Tournament has begun. Yes, it's me, Cyclus. Your favorite commentator and nightmare creature expert. Hold the applause, he. Guys, I have a big surprise for you. Guess who decided to join me in the commentator booth today? The young man paused, and then gestured to the other side of the screen, where an older man with sharp features, deep eyes, and a short beard appeared. That's right, you're not hallucinating. It's Dimi, the great lore master and former Dream Champion. Give him a warm welcome. As a deluge of messages flooded the chat, the older man smiled. Hey, everyone. Cyclus, meanwhile, spoke again. We have a couple of minutes before the real action starts, since challengers need some time to find each other in this beautiful arena. So, while we wait, I have a couple of questions for Dimi. He glanced at the broadcast, which switched between various awakened traveling through the forest. Some of them were well equipped and looked skilled, while others less so. First of all, this year we had a record number of fighters signing up for the tournament. What are your thoughts on that as a veteran Dreamscape duelist, Dimi? The older man smiled. It's nice to see more awakened taking up the illusory sword. Some of them might even know how to use one. Of course, I have to give a lot of credit to the generosity of the great clan Valor. They have really outdone themselves with the prizes this year. No, I am not salty. Not at all. Cyclus laughed, and then threw a mischievous glance at his colleague. Alright, then I'll ask you the question that I am sure is on everyone's mind. As an expert, who do you think will win the tournament? And why is it Mongrel? Chapter 533 Battle Royale. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. As soon as the commentator mentioned Mongrel, the feed changed to the image of a menacing figure in black armor calmly walking through the forest, the blade of the infamous Odachi resting on its shoulder. The lightless pits of the demonic mask's eyes stared directly into the camera, as if there was nothing but darkness beneath it. As soon as Mongrel appeared on the screens, the chat exploded. Yes. It's Mongrel. Hail to the Lord. Ha! Who is Mongrel? You mean hail to the lady? Dimi laughed. Ah, yes. This guy. Well, Mongrel is a really impressive fighter, but the results may not be as predictable as everyone thinks. Every year, the same thing happens. At the later stages of the tournament, two distinct groups clash. One is the Dreamscape elites, and the other is newcomers attracted by the rewards. Historically, the newcomers tend to do better. He sighed and shook his head. Plus, we don't really know a lot about Mongrel. Sure, he has a very impressive track record, but most of his wins were achieved against random opponents. Who knows what will happen when he faces the best of the best? If I were to bet, my money is still on Queen Bee. If anyone has a chance against the newcomers, it should be her. Cyclus nodded a few times, expressing his enthusiastic agreement. Sure. But, still, returning to Mongrel. Everyone is dying to know who he really is under that scary mask. And if anyone knows anything about you, Demi, they'll know that you must have your guesses. The older man smiled, his eyes suddenly gleaming with excitement. Funny you should ask. Actually, I do have a theory. Challenger Lord Corvus was eliminated. Challenger Fry was eliminated. Challenger Irax was eliminated. Sunny stared at the 3 corpses at his feet, which were already turning into a flood of white sparks. These 3 awakened attacked him as a group, and while their skill was not bad and even admirable, he had no problem dispatching the trio in the span of a minute. The fact that they had managed to remain alive for more than several seconds was already an excellent result, considering who their enemy was. Flourishing the Odachi in the air, Sunny shook the drops of blood off its blade and continued walking. Technically, he didn't have to clean his blade, since the blood was bound to turn into sparks of light and disappear, too. But that was already a habit of his. Not to mention being extremely cool. Truth be told, that short skirmish was not as easy as he had made it look. The awakened were dangerous enemies, since each of them possessed a unique aspect. They were cunning, resourceful, and unpredictable. That was why he had to act swiftly, making the fight appear much more brutal than it should have been. Currently, Sunny wasn't using any of his shadows to augment himself. He had decided against it a long time ago, since being able to crush his opponents with brute force was detrimental to his main goal, polishing his battle technique and learning various styles. So, the gloomy shadow was currently behaving like any normal shadow would, while the other 2 were wrapped around the autumn leaf, the memory he used to change the color of his hair. Since it had no other purpose, the augmentation did not give him any advantage. His hair must have looked gorgeous, though. Snickering under the mask, Sunny jogged forward. He was in a rush to eliminate as many other players as he could before the first leaderboard announcement was made. Meeting the group of 3 allied awakened reminded him of the inherent problem with the Battle Royale format of the qualifying rounds. As soon as true powerhouses revealed themselves, weaker participants were bound to band together and start hunting them down. Very soon, there could be a dozen fighters launching a coordinated attack on him, or even more. Sunny was confident of his skill, but not to that degree. Even for a battle-hardened veteran like him, someone who had spent hundreds of days fighting for his life in the darkest depths of the Dream Realm, such a fight would not be easy. This battle royale is going to be much more intense than I have expected. Before Sunny could finish this thought, an ancient tree next to him suddenly exploded into a cloud of splinters, and something sharp shot at him with incredible speed. Cursing, he dashed to the side and barely dodged out of the way. The next moment, a giant arrow whistled past him and embedded itself into the trunk of another tree, its trembling shaft as long as he was tall. Sunny rolled over his shoulder and glanced at the arrow, then lunged into a sprint. Curses! A sniper! A second later, another giant arrow fell from the sky, almost skewering him to the ground. Sunny gritted his teeth and continued running. On the countless screen, an image of a broad-shouldered young man was shown, drawing the string of an oversized bow. His mighty muscles strained, and when he released the string, a thunderous sound rolled down the slopes of a tall hill the archer was standing on. Meanwhile, the 2 commentators were not paying him attention. And so, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that Mongrel is not, in fact, one of the Forgotten Shore survivors, but actually the son of the secret child of the legendary Nightwalker, the founder of the House of Night. Well, this is my theory, anyway. Cyclus glanced at Demi with a wide smile, and then turned the conversation back to the skirmishes in the ancient forest, which were starting to happen more frequently and grow in intensity. Is that so? Well, that secret grandchild seems to be in big trouble. Despite Mongrel's savage victory over the 3 other challengers, now he seems to be in the crosshairs of one of the newcomers you spoke about earlier. Let's take a look. The feed changed to the image of Mongrel running swiftly through the woods, dodging one giant arrow after another. His movements seemed steady and precise, as though he had a second pair of eyes at the back of his head. Cyclus glanced at the indifferent black mask and involuntarily shivered. Wow! Look at that, what a commendable feat, to maintain calm and composure in such a tricky situation. It is almost as if Mongrel is not afraid of anything, not even being bombarded by a rain of enchanted arrows, each of them powerful enough to pierce a fallen monster through. Truly, that man has nerves of steel. I wonder what he is thinking about right now. What the hell? How is this fair? Crap. This is bad, this is so bad. I don't want to die so soon. What the spell am I even supposed to do? Panicking and sweating under the mask, Sunny dodged one arrow after another and cursed non-stop. He had no idea who was shooting him, how they were able to aim through the thick canopy of the ancient trees, and where they were. All he could do was run, dodge, and pray to the dead gods that he survives this devastating barrage. Luckily, a few moments later, he noticed a rock outcropping not too far away, with a deep ravine hiding behind it. Dashing forward, he evaded another giant arrow and slid down the slope of the ravine. Reaching its bottom, he waded through the thick carpet of fallen leaves and pressed his back against the rocks, finally safe from the relentless sniper. Only then could Sunny finally catch his breath and look around. However, as soon as he did, a dark grimace appeared on his face. Damnation! As fate would have it, he was not alone in the ravine. Growling in frustration, Sunny gripped the hilt of the Odachi and once again dodged. A few moments later, the pleasant voice resounded over the ancient forest. Challenger Ajik was eliminated. Chapter 534 Demonic Swordsman. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Sunny remained in the ravine for a few minutes, considering his options and hoping that the unknown archer would have to shift to another target. He had already revealed his ability to teleport during the gate battle, but the quality of the recording hid the details of how he was able to do it. With the crystal clear picture of the Dream Tournament broadcast, though, Sunny couldn't risk using Shadow Step again. Even if he really wanted to. Neither could he send his shadow to scout the position of the archer, which left him in a bind. The best option would have been to stay hidden for a while, but luck was really not on his side today. Shortly after he had defeated the other awakened taking shelter in the ravine, the sound of the rustling leaves subtly changed, and an ominous darkness suddenly moved between the roots of the ancient trees. As more and more people were eliminated, the remaining challengers were bound to start having trouble finding new opponents in the vast arena. So, the arena was designed to grow smaller as time went by. This year, it seemed, the players would be forced to move toward the center by the fact that the beautiful forest was slowly turning back to its true nature, that of a giant, abominable, flesh-devouring titan. Great! This is just goddamn great! Pushing off of the rocks, Sunny cursed and started climbing up the slope. Some time later, full of annoyance and with sparks of light falling off his armor, he walked out of the cover of trees and entered a small clearing. There, an awakened in a lustrous brass armor stood above the disintegrating corpses of 2 others, holding a heavy war hammer in his hands. A few steps away from him, another was bandaging a shallow cut on her forearm. The man threw one glance at Sunny and rolled his eyes. Great! Another mongrel impersonato. Before he could finish speaking, though, the blade of the Odachi pierced his throat, sliding precisely between the lip of the brass breastplate and the bottom edge of the helmet. As the body of the awakened hit the ground, his partner looked at Sunny with wide eyes. A battle axe fell from her hands. Oh crap! You're actually him. The girl turned around and tried to run, but before she could, Sunny was already upon her, ending her participation in the battle royale with one swift strike. Challenger Abel was eliminated. Challenger Win was eliminated. Sunny sighed and remained motionless for a bit, resting. He was more than a little bit tired. But the worst was still to come. Suddenly, the sound of trumpets rolled across the ancient forest, and the pleasant voice of the Dreamskpi announced. Only 500 challengers remain. Bravest warriors are Dar of the Maharna clan, 70.8 kills, Fire Shing, 30.3 kills, Mongrel, 20.7 kills. Sunny stared at the sky, the black mask hiding a grim expression on his face. 70.8 kills, gee. Who is this monster? He had a hunch that he already knew. Defeating his own 20.7 opponents had not been exactly time-consuming, but looking for them was. Who wouldn't need to waste precious minutes prowling the woods in search of enemies to kill, though? A damned archer with a strange ability to sense his targets across vast distances and through any obstacle, perhaps. I need to step up my game, I guess. It wouldn't do for Lord Mongrel to lag behind some legacy prince. As if to answer his thoughts, a dozen figures suddenly appeared from behind the trees, surrounding him. These awakened were armed with all kinds of weapons, looking at him with satisfied expressions. It seemed that they had planned this ambush really well. Sunny had nowhere to retreat, and no chance to escape. And since the midway results had been announced just a few seconds ago, it was obvious that there was at least one person with some sort of clairvoyant ability among them. Otherwise, no one was supposed to be able to pinpoint his location this early into the battle. What else did this bastard know? Sunny sighed. One of the ambushers took a step forward and smiled. Sorry, Mongrel. All of us here really respect you, especially after you risked your life to hold that gate. But those valor weapons are just too sweet, and we need to think about ourselves. No hard feelings, right? The menacing figure in black armor stared at the young man for a few moments, and then an elusive, but strangely familiar voice resounded from beneath the fearsome mask. None whatsoever. Inwardly, though, Sunny was not at all calm. Bastards. Lowlifes. Scoundrels. 12 against 1. Where is your shame, thugs? Come here then, you damned cowards. I'm gonna kill you, and then your grandmas. Just a moment later, the ambushers obliged. All kinds of aspect abilities activated at once, turning the small clearing into a furious storm of deadly elements and steel. Oh crap. Oh no. It seems like Mongrel is in trouble. Cyclus glanced at the sea of outraged comments, and then back to the broadcast. Both he and Demi were glued to the screen, even forgetting to do their job, and filled the silence with informative or entertaining chatter. The scene in front of them was just too terrifying. Just a moment ago, they saw a lone figure in black armor standing motionlessly in the center of a bright clearing, staring at the 12 ambushers surrounding him with cold indifference. Mongrel's voice sounded from the speakers, strangely dark and ethereal. None whatsoever. And then, everything exploded in a brutal symphony of violence. The ambushers attacked without wasting even a second, their assault deadly and well coordinated. Cyclus held his breath. Come on, Mongrel. Use your spatial aspect. From what he could see, this was the only chance the demonic swordsman had to escape. However, as a fan himself, Cyclus knew that Mongrel never used his aspect in the dreamscape, as if it was somehow beneath him. Mongrel only ever relied on his sword, his skill, and unadulterated technique. Such dignity. And this time, too, the mysterious warrior refused to compromise his unassailable, noble principles. Instead of activating his ability, he simply lunged at the enemies without fear or doubt. Then, something strange happened. His infamous Odachi suddenly turned into a stream of impenetrably dark, liquid metal and flowed onto his arm, soon turning into a round shield. With that shield, Mongrel deflected an incoming javelin, then twisted his body, dodging a hail of razor-sharp wind blades, and dove into an immolating stream of fire that one of the awakened breathed out of her mouth. Miraculously, he emerged on the other side unscathed, like an infernal monster that could not be burned even in the flames of hell. The black armor reflected the crimson flames, somehow becoming even more menacing. In the next second, Mongrel's spiked gauntlet connected with the face of one of the ambushers. It was as if the poor man was hit by a mountain. His skull caved, and then exploded, the lifeless body folding as it flew to the side and turned into a rain of sparks. What happened next could only be described as pure carnage. The black figure pounced on the ambushers, using both his gauntlet fist and his round shield to sow devastation among their ranks. Mongrel moved with terrifying speed and devious cunning, using the bodies of his enemies to block or prevent attacks from their comrades. Cyclus wasn't sure, but he thought that he saw a couple of them die from friendly fire. The rest fell to the demonic butcher himself, though. Every move Mongrel made was precise, calculated, and deadly, but also brutal and utterly cruel. He danced among his enemies like a grim reaper, killing them one after another without showing any sign of even knowing what mercy or hesitation were. Blood, screams, and flashes of light filled the clearing for a good couple of minutes. And when it was all over, the lone black figure was left standing alone amidst the bodies, covered in blood from head to toe. A moment later, that blood turned into sparks of light too, and awash in light, Mongrel stepped forward, his armor as black as pristine as ever. Cyclus remained silent for a few moments, and then said hoarsely, "Hey, Demi. Did Mongrel just slaughtered 12 awakened solo?" The older man cleared his throat. "That, I might rethink my bet. Actually, my money is on that man." His colleague blinked a couple of times. After that, he glanced at the comments and forced out a smile. Is he even a man, though? Meanwhile, Sunny was on the verge of collapsing onto the ground. Arg. Everything hurts. What the hell, why is this stupid battle royale so intense? I almost sullied my pants. That battle, hell, it was too close. He barely managed to survive, and had only prevailed because the 12 awakened were clearly not a real cohort. They were experienced enough to coordinate their physical attacks, but when varied and unique aspect abilities had come into play, all their cohesion turned into pure havoc. He had used that confusion to quickly get rid of the most dangerous opponents, and then somehow cleaned up the rest. The mantle of the underworld still took several solid hits, the armor itself held, but his body beneath was bruised and battered. Are these damn rewards even worth it? Damn, they'd better be. Suppressing a pained groan, he willed the soul serpent to turn back into an Odachi, and headed away from the clearing. Just 500. 480. 8 left. This is going to be a long day. Chapter 535. No hard feelings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A triumphant sound of trumpets resounded above the ancient forest. Only 3 challengers remain. These brave heroes are Mongrel, 111 kills, Fire Shing, 80.7 kills, Kim Sato, 50.9 kills. Dream of glory awaits, heroes. Sunny dragged his tired body out of the forest, feeling the ground under his feet shift and tremble. At this point, the Titan was almost fully awake, and no part of the arena was safe. With the exception of the narrow strip of sand between the dark woods and the lake that he had just reached, of course. Sunny walked into the shallow water and stopped, using the soul serpent to support himself. His breath was ragged and hoarse, and there were several dents on the onyx surface of the mantle of the underworld. Almost at the same time, 2 more figures emerged from the darkness of the hungry forest. One was an attractive young woman with broad shoulders and an athletic build, her long auburn hair gathered in a ponytail. She was wearing a modest red tunic, her torso protected by a leather cuirass, and wielded a light spear. Her blue eyes were tired, but clear, full of intensity and focus. The other was a man in heavy armor, carrying a great sword with its blade inscribed by a complicated weave of runes. His face was hidden behind the visor of a helmet, with only calm, cold eyes visible in the narrow slit. His steps were confident, but a little unsteady, betraying a dire level of exhaustion. This must be Fire Shing and Sato. The mighty archer had not made it. Sunny could only guess what had happened to him, but the most likely scenario was pretty obvious. The powerful legacy must have run into an ambush similar to those Sunny himself had encountered, only with a much less happy result. Well, that was life. Dar of the Maharna clan had paid the price for daring to stand out too much without having enough power to answer for such audacity. On one hand, it was not very fair, as far as tournaments went. On the other hand, when was anything ever fair? Sunny much preferred to stay in the shadows, even if this damned persona of his had somewhat failed to help him in that regard. Coincidentally, none of those who had conspired to form a group had made it this far, as well. And with a good reason, the type of person who would resort to such methods did not have what it took to win this battle, to begin with. So Sunny was not going to underestimate his last two opponents. They had already proven how formidable they were. The three awakened stood apart, looking at each other warily. The clear water of the tranquil lake splashed against their shins. The magnificent castle loomed in the distance, its ancient walls bathed in the bright sunlight. The vista was beautiful and peaceful, but the air was practically crackling with tension. After a while, the man in a suit of heavy plate armor turned to the fiery young woman and said hoarsely, "Let's deal with that demon together. We can decide who wins between the two of us after that thing is eliminated." Sunny rolled his eyes. Wow! How unexpected. He gripped the hilt of the soul serpent, preparing himself for a tough fight. To his surprise, though, the young woman shook her head and said simply, a clear expression of disdain appearing on her freckled face. "No." He raised his eyebrows. "Ha! Such nobility, gods, what an idiot. What a fool." The man called Sato laughed, and then glanced at Mongrel. "How about it, Mongrel? Same offer. Let's take care of the girl first, and then have a proper duel, you and I. Or is it beneath you?" Sunny gritted his teeth, but had no choice but to say, "It is." "Arg, curse it." Sato shook his head. "Young people these days, so naive. Have the dream realm taught you nothing?" Sunny raised the odachi and grinned. "That it taught me everything." With that, he shifted his weight and prepared to dash forward. Doviko, the time for words was over. The other two also understood that, and in the next moment, the calmness of the clear lake was instantly no more. What the? As soon as Sunny moved, a powerful explosion thundered, and he was thrown into the air by the devastating shockwave. Landing in a roll, he hurriedly slotted the memory of fire into the mantle and rose just in time to see a massive fireball dissipate into the air. His body felt even more damaged than it had been a moment ago. Kim Sato, however, took the brunt of the explosion. His heavy armor was mangled and torn, patches of burned skin visible through the tears. Just as Fire Shing lunged at him, tongues of flame appearing on the blade of her spear, he suddenly moved with unexpected agility, thrusting his sword forward. He wasn't aiming at the girl, though. Sunny noticed the rows of runes ignite with a menacing purple light, and then hastily threw his body sideways. In the next moment, a phantom figure of an armored giant appeared in the air and slashed downward, cutting the air where he had just stood with the identical copy of the same greatsword. What a powerful memory! Since both of his enemies seemed to possess deadly means of range attack, he had no choice but to close the distance. Luckily, Sato was already entangled with Fire Shing, who rained a barrage of lightning-fast, but precise and deadly strikes on him. It was as if the young woman was dancing, her auburn hair and red tunic flying through the air like tongues of wild flame. Interesting style. I should leave her for last. The man, meanwhile, didn't try to evade the burning spear and instead turned his body swiftly, making sure that it struck the undamaged parts of his armor. Despite being mangled by the explosion, the heavy armor held, betraying the fact that it, too, was a memory of considerable power. It didn't matter, though. A moment later, Sunny was upon them and joined the fight, the Dark Odachi united with the flaming spear and a runic greatsword to sing the Song of Steel. A few minutes later, the voice of the dreamscape spoke again. Challenger Kim Sato was eliminated. Challenger Fire Shing was eliminated. Challenger Mongrel is victorious. Glory to the victor. As blood turned into a flood of sparks and the waters of the tranquil lake became clear once more, triumphant music thundered from all sides. Hidden behind the black mask, Sunny grimaced and suppressed the desire to plug his ears. What's with this terrible noise? Arg. That was way too hard. Unbeknownst to him, the network was already exploding with countless articles, all titled more or less the same. No hard feelings. Lord Mongrel easily defeats 1,000 awakened. Chapter 536 Lacon of Chivalry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What a chore. Sunny dragged himself out of the dreamscape pod and sighed. Even though the battle royale happened inside an illusion, his body wasn't tired or bruised, the mental exhaustion was real. The qualifier round had turned out to be much more demanding than Sunny had thought. Of course, he could have used the 3 shadows to augment himself and devastate the entire arena, but that would have defeated the purpose. Sunny had managed fine with just his own strength. This way, he was also polishing his technique and enriching his comprehension of shadow dance, which was not a small matter. Putting on some clothes, he returned upstairs, sprawled on the sofa, and then looked at his communicator. Currently, hundreds of similar illusory battles were being broadcasted for people to see. Some were already close to a conclusion, some were in the thick of bloodshed, and some were only just starting. However, not every broadcast received the same amount of attention. Those arenas where renowned duelists or especially powerful newcomers were fighting pulled the most of it. Sadly, due to Mongrel's infamy, the one Sunny had just finished was among the more popular broadcasts. It was also one of the earliest to end, so clips of the most exciting moments were already circulating on the network. Sunny groaned. Perfect, just perfect. Another damned viral clip. His final fight against Fire Shing and Sato received a lot of views, but nowhere near as many as the clip of his brutal confrontation with the 12 ambushers. The comments were exploding. Hell yeah. Our Lord taught these thugs a lesson. Only 12. These guys are idiots, they should have gathered at least 100. No hard feelings. None whatsoever. Gods, how can anyone be so cool? Did you see his Odachi shapeshift? I was not hallucinating, right? Is it just me, or does Mongrel's hair look extra gorgeous today? He grimaced, then looked at the comments under the other video. That Sato guy, why did he even ask? Doesn't he know that Mongrel is an icon of chivalry? Of course it is beneath Lord Mongrel. He is so noble. What are you fools talking about? Mongrel is not noble. He is a wild beast. He only said that teaming up is beneath him because a beast like him doesn't need anyone's help to kill everyone. Gee, so many edgelords in the comments today. I miss the early days when only true experts knew about Mongrel. His technique was way better back then, too. Sunny stared at the screen for a while, then shook his head. What's wrong with these people? Since when was I an icon of chivalry? Wait, what does chivalry even mean? He shook his head again, then switched to the official feed and looked up the results of his match. Sunny, of course, qualified for the tournament the moment he had won the battle royale. However, other participants also had a chance to move on to the next stage. That depended on their performance and individual score, so there was no set number of people who would be allowed to continue. As it turned out of the 1,000 awakened who had fought in his battle royale, 2 more qualified to participate in the tournament. One of them was Fire Shing, the young woman whom he had faced last, and Dar of the Maharna clan, the archer who had almost skewered Sunny with his giant arrows. Ha! The bastard squeezed through, after all. Losing interest, Sunny turned off the communicator and yawned. Tomorrow, the real tournament was going to begin. Around 1,000 fighters, those who proved their mettle in the qualifying rounds, were going to face each other in proper duels, and after several days of intense competition, one victor was going to emerge to reap the best reward. I better rest well. He went back into the underground dojo, climbed into the sleeping pod, and closed his eyes. Soon, the familiar sight of the sanctuary appeared in front of him. Without wasting any time, Sunny left the altar island, went to his room, crashed on the narrow cot, and almost instantly fell asleep, who said that there was no rest for the wicked. The next morning, Rain appeared at his doorstep for the training session, punctual as ever. Luckily, the tournament was not going to start until noon, so Sunny didn't have to find an excuse to cancel their lesson. Not that he would. This was much more important than some stupid tournament. He could get powerful memories elsewhere, but every day that passed was one less day for him to increase his sister's chances of survival. So, tutoring Rain took precedence. The girl repeated the movements and katas he had shown her the last time. Her form was as horrible as he had expected, but Rain was nothing if not diligent. She was improving with every set, slowly correcting the mistakes he pointed to her and absorbing the technique into her bones. For a complete novice, she was doing rather great. Runs in the blood, I guess. Making sure that she couldn't see, Sunny faced away and grinned. At that exact moment, his communicator received a message. After looking at it, his mood improved even further. The message was from Aiko, informing him that the soul shards he had retrieved from the worm vine were finally sold. Transcendent shards were infinitely more rare and precious than those of lesser ranks, not only because they stored more essence, but also because there were aspect abilities and spelltech applications that depended on the quality of the raw materials used. So, Sunny just became considerably richer. He had not dared to sell Solvain's soul shard, though. There were certainly awakened out there who could determine the nature and source of a shard. If anyone learned that he was in possession of one coming from a human saint, Sunny would have to answer too many uncomfortable questions. So, he had just given it to Kai instead. Strengthening the members of his cohort was, in a sense, the same as strengthening himself, so Sunny didn't feel that aggrieved because of the loss of potential profit. It was still incredibly sad, though. After the training session was over, he made a tasty breakfast for himself and Rain. The girl was hungry as a wolf, so she destroyed the contents of her plate in record time. When she was almost done, Sunny glanced at her with an incredulous expression and asked neutrally. "Has that tournament of yours started?" Rain swallowed the last bite and smiled. The dream tournament. Yes, the qualifying rounds were yesterday. He took a sip of tea, acting indifferent. Oh really? Right, I think I saw some clips on the network. Did you? She nodded. Yeah. Sunny lingered for a bit, then mentioned as if he just happened to think about it. Hear that mongrel guy is quite good. Rain scoffed. Sure, I guess. But I don't like him. Sunny almost choked on his tea. What? Why? It took a lot of effort to keep his voice calm and conversational. Why don't you like Mongrel? Mongrel is awesome. He defeated 12 awakened solo, you know. The girl simply shrugged. I don't know. He just seems pompous. And who does he think he is, going around teaching people how to live? Plus, what's up with that mask? A good person wouldn't have to hide behind a mask, that's what I think. Sunny glared at her with a bit of resentment, then forced out a smile. Well, I don't know. The mask is a powerful memory, for sure. And he probably doesn't even want to teach people anything, at least that is my impression. Rain frowned. Plus, he caused so many problems for Knight. If he had the tiniest bit of conscience, he would have come forward and refuted those ridiculous rumors, but I bet that he doesn't. Sonny's eye twitched. Aha! So this is the root of all this. Just you wait, Kai. I'll repay you for this one day. He slowly took another sip of tea and asked, hiding his outrage. You seem to know a lot about that tournament, huh? I thought you weren't very interested in that kind of stuff. Rain sighed. I am not. I just thought that maybe I'll see that awakened again, the woman who saved me. But she's not participating. Sonny wanted to say something, but before she could, the girl added. Well, of course. A true awakened like her would never waste time on something frivolous like this. She is probably busy doing something important, exploring the dream realm to help humanity, protecting people from the nightmare creatures. Stuff like that, you know. Sonny smiled. That is certainly a possibility. Wait, what do you mean? A true awakened wouldn't waste. Didn't you suggest that I participate in that tournament? Rain looked at him as though he was stupid. That's you. And that's her. What kind of question is that? By the way, what time it is? Oh, goodness. I have to run. With that, she hurriedly waved Sonny goodbye and dashed to the door, leaving him completely stunned. What the hell is that supposed to mean? That's me, and that's her. He remained motionless for a while, then slowly closed his mouth and looked at the time. As it turned out, he had to hurry, too. The tournament duels were about to begin. Walking toward the elevator, Sonny was seething with anger. That's me, well, of course, that's me. I'll show her, hell, I'll show all of them. I mean, Mongrel will. Ah, curses. Chapter 537 Learning Curve. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The opening ceremony of the tournament was supposed to be a spectacular event, with thousands of challengers, each of them a talented awakened fighter, gathered in the magnificent central courtyard of the illusory bastion. Slightly more than 1,000 of them were those participating in the individual competition, and the rest were members of competing cohorts. The representative of the great clan Valor welcomed them and gave a short speech, after which an androgynous person of undetermined age in exquisite silk garments, the eccentric saint responsible for creating the dreamscape, followed suit. This transcendent had a hypnotically beautiful face that was, for some reason, plastered with an unreasonable amount of makeup, and a genteel, almost effeminate bearing. If Sonny was there, he would recognize their pleasant voice as the one that read all the announcements in the dreamscape. But he wasn't. Why would he waste time on these theatrics? He skipped the speeches, the performances, the incredible montage of the most exciting moments from the battles of the previous day, and even the event that everyone had been waiting for with bated breath, the formation of the tournament bracket that would determine who would face whom and in what order. Sonny didn't care who was going to fight him, he just wanted to kill somebody as soon as possible. With each round of duels, half of the participants were going to be eliminated. That meant that he had to win 10 consecutive fights to receive the best reward. Of course, it wasn't an easy task. By now, there were no amateurs remaining in the tournament. Every single one of the 1,000 challengers was a formidable warrior, and by the end of it, only true talents would remain. It was also a perfect chance for him to try and learn their polished battle styles. Sonny waited until the bracket was almost complete and finally dove into the dreamscape. The menacing black figure of Mongrel appeared among the crowd of challengers, causing a bit of a stir. Immediately, those closest to him began to whisper. Hey! It's him! Man! The bastard is even scarier in real life. That scene from the montage. Gods, I'm so glad we chose to enter the tournament as a cohort. Tui. What's the big deal? I hope I draw him as an opponent. Crushing this wannabe should be fun. Ignoring the whispers, Sonny looked around with curiosity. He wasn't interested in the people gathered around him, but in the courtyard itself. This was his first time inside Bastion, well, an illusory version of it. Still, he couldn't help but feel a bit of awe. This was a legendary place, one of the earliest citadels conquered by humans, their greatest foothold in the dream realm. The seat of a great clan's power and the former stronghold of one of the demons. It was like he was part of history. Sunny's curiosity didn't last long, however, quickly drowned by anger and annoyance. That girl. What does she even know? His hands were itching to slaughter someone. Finally, the bracket was complete. Sunny didn't bother to study it and just prepared himself for the battle. A few seconds later, his vision darkened for a moment, and then he found himself in the courtyard again, only this time, the crowd of challengers was gone, leaving only him and his opponent standing opposite each other. There were flags streaming in the air, and thousands of excited spectators looking down from the stands. They were chanting, screaming, and waving their hands. His opponent was a young man in a striking blood-red armor, wielding a long espadon. His looked vaguely familiar. As soon as the young man saw the black mask, his face paled. I knew this would happen. Crap, not a guy. Sunny growled and dashed forward, raising the soul serpent. A few moments later, a human head flew into the air, the audience exploded with cheers, and the pleasant voice announced. Challenger Paradise in Red was eliminated. Cyclus was in the middle of a light-hearted discussion with Demi when the producer of the broadcast addressed him through the earpiece, forcing the young man to blink a couple of times and mask his surprise with a smile. Ah, sorry to interrupt you, Demi, but it seems we already have a win. Wow, that was fast. The feed changed to a replay of a swift and brutal duel that ended before the voice of the dreamscape could even introduce the fighters. That was a first in his memory. Ah, ha. Of course, it was Mongrel. Who else? His colleague laughed. Such bad luck for his opponent. I hope that he is not disheartened. There is no shame in losing to such a fearsome enemy. Everyone who made it through the qualifying rounds already deserves our respect. Back in my day, getting into the tournament was much easier. Cyclus agreed, glanced at the figure in black armor standing motionlessly above the corpse of his opponent, and couldn't help but shiver. Was it just him, or did Mongrel look especially ferocious today? Maybe he really is a nightmare creature. After that first unexpected win, several other heated duels were shown. Cyclus and Demi switched from commentating on them to commercial breaks, to sometimes joining the other commentators to spectate the most exciting cohort battles. After a while, it was Mongrel's turn to fight again. This time, the producers switched the feed to his duel beforehand, expecting another fast and brutal kill. However, they were left disappointed. In that duel, and during a couple of next ones as well, the enigmatic swordsman seemed to lose all his edge, and engaged in protracted, slow, exhausting battles with his opponents, only managing to dispatch them after long and arduous fights. Cyclus, who was somewhat of a Mongrel fan, but not a die-hard follower, was a bit confused by the sudden change. Luckily, he had an expert partner. Hey, Demi, why does it seem that Mongrel is struggling all of a sudden? After his performance yesterday, I was sure that we will see pure carnage again. The older man chuckled. Ah, I see that you did not do your homework. That is what Mongrel does, and what makes him so dangerous. Yes, it might seem as though he is struggling, but in fact, he is not. He is learning. Cyclus glanced at the chat, then laughed. No, I am sure that Demi didn't mean learning to suck. But, what exactly did you mean, Demi? The resident expert smiled. Mongrel is known as a genius fighter not because he is strong and skilled, there's plenty of such people among the duelists, but because he has an uncanny ability to absorb and mirror his opponent's battle style. So what you see is not him losing, it's him trying to comprehend the enemy's technique through being on the receiving end of it. It is truly remarkable. And a bit terrifying. Cyclus stared at the feed and finally noticed that, indeed, Mongrel's style seemed to change with every duel, closely resembling that of his opponents. His strange weapon also shifted and changed to mirror theirs. That's so cool. He turned to the camera with a wide, delighted smile. Well, there you have it, folks. So don't dismiss Mongrel yet, who knows, maybe he will shock us all yet. Soon, it was time for Sunny's last duel of the day. Once again, he appeared in the courtyard and glanced at his opponent, excited to learn what style they were going to use. When he saw the enemy, though, a dark smile appeared on his face. What a nice surprise, so we meet again. Or rather, for the first time. Yesterday, we didn't have a chance to get properly acquainted, you bastard. Opposite him stood a tall young man with broad shoulders and an incredibly muscular physique. He looked mighty and confident, like a statue of an ancient deity come to life. It was the damned archer who had almost sniped him from across the arena during the battle royale. Dar of the Maharna clan, was it? Well, well. Let me introduce myself. Chapter 538 Devouring Styles. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. This was the fifth and final duel that Sunny had to fight today. His previous three opponents all practiced unique and interesting styles, so he had taken his sweet time trying to learn from them. He succeeded twice and failed once. The first opponent was called Straw Hat and used a curved sword, his technique relying on extreme speed and flexibility. Even Sunny, who had himself trained to make his body as malleable as possible, struggled to keep up with this unpredictable opponent. The alias of the second one, the other fool, was a bit familiar, but the style he used was not. Sunny spent a lot of time trying to understand the strange pattern of essence expenditure the fighter used, all the while dodging unpredictable attacks of his exquisite halberd. In the end, he learned a lot from this fight. However, it was the third opponent that had really tested him. This awakened, whose alias was Blue Vash, wielded a slender rapier and practiced a deceptively simple battle style. What separated him from the rest was that each of his movements was utterly perfect, and every one of Sunny's mistakes had been instantly punished. It was as though the man had a supernatural ability to see even the tiniest flaw in his enemy's technique, and was able to immediately exploit it. No matter how hard Sunny had tried to comprehend the essence of the style Blue Vash was using, he couldn't grasp it. In the end, he was forced to overwhelm and kill the astute fencer just to survive. However, despite that failure, he learned from this fight even more. Regardless, after several duels against such talented fighters, Sunny felt that his mastery of Shadow Dance, which had stayed stagnant for a while, was finally progressing again. He was slowly approaching a precipice. That was why he was so glad to see Dar of the Maharna clan. To some, facing a legacy might have seemed like a tough break. But for Sunny, legacies were like gift boxes. They hid all kinds of goodies, his for the taking. The problem was that, just like the covetous coffer, this box in particular could potentially bite off his greedy hand. The young legacy fighter wasn't using a bow anymore, of course. Which wasn't a surprise. Legacies were trained to be proficient with a multitude of weapons, and a duel was not a place for arrows. Instead, he was holding a menacing great mace, its round head brimming with sharp spikes. What made this guy so dangerous was not his bow, in any case. It was his strange ability to zero in on the enemy and somehow perceive their every move, or whatever it was that had allowed him to barrage Sunny with arrows from afar with frighteningly high precision. While Sunny was staring at the mighty Dar, he was looking back at Mongrel. The Scion's gaze traveled across the mantle of the underworld, making Sunny shiver for some reason, and then reached Weaver's mask. Suddenly, the muscular young man frowned. Strange. An ascended armor, and an echo. For a weapon. Even if it is just dormant, you've done well for yourself. But that mask, where did you get it? The corner of Sunny's mouth twitched. Chatty enemies, they were the worst. Especially ones with such a keen vision. Took it off a random corpse. He paused, and then added with calm indifference. Shall we start? Or do you need time to run to the other side of the arena, hide, and summon your bow? Sunny was trying to antagonize the young on purpose, hoping that he would forget this line of questioning. Luckily, his strategy worked. Dar of the Maharna clan grinned. No, no need. Who knows? Maybe I'll take it off your corpse one day, too. With that, he raised his heavy weapon, and suddenly lunged forward with a speed that no one his size was supposed to possess. The spiked mace whistled through the air, and in the next moment, the sound of clashing steel rang across the arena. Strong. Sunny was thrown back by the force of the impact. His block held, and the soul serpent held, too. However, he failed to adjust the weight of the mantle of the underworld enough, so his body was pushed back. How the hell is he so strong? I have 3 soul cores, damn it. Dar didn't care. He was much taller, had much more muscle mass, a much longer reach, not to mention that as a legacy, he could have had many charms and memory enchantments feeding him strength, agility, and resilience. This fight wasn't going to be easy. Before Sunny could even properly land, the mace was flying at his head again. He pivoted on one leg, dodged the spikes, and dashed forward, hoping to close distance and get up close to the opponent, where his small stature and the shorter weapon would give him an advantage. The soul serpent lashed out, aimed at the enemy's heart. Dar was wearing a light leather cuirass that left his shoulders and arms exposed, so Sunny hoped to pierce it with one blow. However, to his surprise, the tip of the Odachi slid off the light leather armor as if it was forged from adamantine steel instead. Damn legacies! The legacy in question spun his mace, forcing Sunny to retreat, then glanced down at the spot where a tiny scratch was left on his cuirass. When he looked up again, his eyes were full of dark amusement. Not bad. Sunny gritted his teeth. Still running his mouth. Let's see if you have any breath to waste in a couple of minutes. The two of them clashed again, exchanging dozens of blows. Both were strong, fast, and skilled. Neither could easily overwhelm the opponent. This was the second time Sunny had to fight a legacy, third, if he counted Nephi's. The difference was incredibly obvious. His previous opponents were talented and experienced, but none of them could compare to Dar. This young man was a deadly battle machine crafted to reign on any battlefield, trained from the moment he had taken his first step to wield weapons of war and destroy his enemies. He was no match for Castor, however. But Castor had never gotten the chance to become an awakened. Once a legacy learned to control the flow of soul essence, their power grew exponentially. Which was what Sunny was currently experiencing. Raw power shaped into a deadly weapon by long years of relentless practice, and superb skill. And yet, he wasn't worried. Dar was powerful, skilled, and experienced, but he lacked something that people like Sunny had, the memory of fear and bitter defeats, knowledge of death, and a vicious will to persevere. Sunny didn't doubt that the legacy had spent a lot of time in the dream realm, battling nightmare creatures, but he did doubt that Dar had ever found himself in absolute despair, having to claw his way back to life. His experience was that of fighting down, and not fighting up. As Master Jet would say, he wasn't a killer. But Sunny was, and so, the legacy had already lost this fight, even if he didn't know it yet. He was only alive because his enemy was interested in learning sophisticated battle styles. And there was a lot of sophistication in Dar's aggressive and domineering battle style. Legacies were truly in a league of their own. This was not something that Sunny could learn in a heartbeat. He needed time. And so, their violent duel had turned into a slow, but terrifyingly intense battle of attrition. A minute passed, then another, then another. The two fighters were still entangled in a ferocious melee. The spectators were at the edge of their seats, holding their breaths as they watched the incredible spectacle. The direct feed of the duel was gathering more and more viewers. Bastard, how are doing this? How? Sunny was trying to peer into the core of Dar's style, but failed to understand its essence over and over again. Until he didn't. I see. So this is how. It was so obvious. By that point, both of them were exhausted and wounded, their reserves of essence running dry. Sunny had much more left, of course, Even though continuously enhancing his physical prowess and using the feather of truth, enchantment of the mantle was hungrily eating through shadow essence, he had 3 times the capacity. He also had much better control of it, it seemed. All the time Sunny had spent meditating in the sky below was not for nothing, after all. Feeling the foundation of shadow dance grow stronger, Sunny grinned behind the mask, and suddenly changed his entire attitude. His movements turned sharper and more aggressive, his demeanor bold and overbearing. The soul serpent turned into liquid darkness, and then shaped itself into a spiked mace. Dar was thrown off by the sudden change, but only for a moment, however. That moment was all Sunny needed. Dodging the enemy's attack before it could even fully manifest, as if reading the legacy's thoughts, he dove under the strike and delivered a crushing blow of his own. His enemy's leather armor still held, but the bones beneath it did not. Dar's ribcage caved, and he spat a stream of blood. In the next second, another hit connected with his jaw, turning the young man's face into a bloody mess. He fell to his knees and raised a hand, desperately trying to block the finishing blow. The demon in black armor knew no mercy, though. Calmly raising the mace, he brutally brought it down. The crowd let out a collective scream. In the silence that followed, a pleasant voice announced. Dar of the Maharna clan was eliminated. Chapter 539 Out of Reach. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Sunny climbed out of the pod and stretched, lamenting the fact that Dreamscape capsules weren't as sophisticated as the sleeping pods used to enter the actual dream realm. Due to his luxurious metal sarcophagus, he had almost forgotten the rusty feeling of spending too much time inside one of these things. Despite the fact that the duels themselves had not lasted too long, an entire day already passed. Sunny was somewhat tired, but instead of resting, he commanded the soul serpent to shape itself into a weapon and walked to the middle of the dojo. He was impatient to cement the knowledge of the battle styles he had absorbed today. Sunny started to perform various katas, executing each one slowly at first, and then quicker, and quicker, and quicker still. Soon, he moved with incredible speed, his lithe and flexible body almost leaving afterimages behind. Lean muscles were rolling under his pale skin, which soon glistened with sweat. Sunny fluidly shifted from one style to another, his movements simultaneously firm and flowing, sharp and gentle, clear and unpredictable. The soul serpent flowed from one form to another, too, as insidious and shapeless as the person who wielded it. It was as though Sunny was performing a strange, graceful, viciously complicated dance. His 3 shadows danced with him, moving swiftly on the ceramic plates of the armored floor. If Sunny could look at himself right now, he would be surprised to see that his movements were eerily similar to the dance that the young slave girl had once performed in his dream. But while her movements were beautiful and smooth, his were deadly and sharp. Hers were flawless, while his were slightly crude, as if he had not mastered his art yet. I can feel it, the second step. I can feel it, but why can't I reach it? Something is missing. After a long time, Sunny tiredly fell on the cold ceramic floor and remained motionless for several minutes, his chest moving heavily. There was a tired, but determined expression on his face. More, I need more. More and better. In the morning, Sunny had some free time before he had to enter the dreamscape again. Making himself a cup of tea, he relaxed in a comfortable chair and took out his communicator. After yesterday, the number of duelists remaining in the tournament had drastically reduced. Now, there were only 30.2 of them left. Each one was a formidable opponent, so Sunny decided to study their previous fights a bit. Luckily, all the recordings were readily available on the network. His were, too. Now I am even more sure that Mongrel is a legacy. Or an actual demon. Who else could have defeated that monster, Dar? Ah. Mongrel knew that this guy was an archer, so he even offered to give him time to get away. He's so cordial. So noble. What an inspiration. You mean an actual demoness, right? Sunny shivered and, not even trying to look at the comments, hurriedly scrolled past these videos to start doing his research. Maybe one of these guys will help me advance to the next level of Shadow Dance. Out of curiosity, he also glanced at the cohort competition leaderboard. The team that was currently in the first place was called Librarians, and, weirdly, consisted of only 2 people. Their aliases were Unorganized Laundry and IZA, which didn't tell him anything. But considering that these 2 were currently dominating much larger cohorts, they must have been a truly fearsome duo. Initially, Sunny had only joined the Dream Tournament to reap the alluring rewards, so he had not thought much of it. But now, he was starting to suspect that it was going to be a humbling experience. He had already faced several troublesome opponents that earned his reluctant acknowledgement, and things would only get exponentially harder from here. Due to his recent progress, Sunny had allowed himself to become a little vain. He was stronger and more experienced than most of the awakened he met, so he had almost forgotten to always expect the worst. Seeing these powerful awakened helped him remember how dangerous it was to underestimate the enemy. And these weren't even the true elites. Real powerhouses of the awakened world would never reveal their might in a public tournament. Sunny was one of these hidden tigers himself, after all, so he would know. With a dark expression, he shook his head and concentrated on the screen of the communicator. Very soon, he was back in the arena. Sunny had skipped all the theatrics again and only entered the dreamscape at the last minute, hoping to avoid any situation that could lead to him being asked questions. Sadly, he couldn't avoid his opponents, and if they wanted to talk, he had to answer. Currently, he was facing a man wearing a peculiar armor made out of rusted metal, their face grim and full of dark apprehension. He was in his early 30s, and looked like someone who had led a rough life. Challenger Mongrel has joined the fight. Challenger what? No, wait. Has joined the fight. Hidden behind the mask, Sunny raised his eyebrows. What's up with that alias? Wait. Why does it sound familiar? While he was trying to remember where he had heard this bizarre name, the man summoned a shield and an arming sword, glanced at him darkly, and asked. You're the new guy everyone is talking about. Sunny sighed, knowing what would follow. No. His opponent frowned. Why are you lying? Sunny rolled his eyes, exasperated by all the talk. However, he didn't want to attack the older man recklessly. His opponent had to be quite powerful to get this far. I am not lying. The man sneered. That's exactly what a liar would say. Do you think I'm an idiot? Gods! Can you just attack already? He took a step forward and said. Yes. The older man stared at him for a few moments, his face full of anger and confusion. After a while, he hissed. Brat, you must be courting death. Chapter 540 Blood Feud. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The peculiar man had an excellent technique, but it seemed as though anger was clouding his judgment. Sunny spent several minutes dodging and blocking his attacks, carefully observing both the enemy and the enemy's shadow. It wasn't long before he was able to grasp the essence of the enemy's style. There. I understand now. After more than 900 duels in the dreamscape, his ability to comprehend different battle styles had considerably improved. And this guy wasn't using anything he had never seen before, his technique was polished, but unoriginal. Not that there was anything wrong with that, except that it was also too straightforward and inflexible. How did he even get so far? Since there was nothing else for Sunny to learn, he switched from defense to attack and delivered a swift strike, leaving a shallow wound on the opponent's shoulder. A few drops of blood landed on the mantle of the underworld, and in the next moment, Sunny learned just how the man was able to climb so high on the tournament ladder. Suddenly, the blood shone with menacing crimson light and exploded, throwing Sunny back and tearing the soul serpent from his hand. At the same time, his enemy's wound ignited with dim red radiance, and in the next second, his movements became much faster, his blow carrying much more weight. What the hell? Sunny barely dodged a devastating downward slash, rolled away, and grabbed the hilt of the Odachi, just in time to block another strike and be thrown back a few steps again. BDNVL.M. How is he suddenly so strong? He struggled desperately to keep up with the man in rusted armor, who had somehow instantly become utterly overbearing. In the process, another drop of blood landed on him. Crap. The mantle withstood another explosion. Its surface did not crack, but Sonny could tell that the armor was weakened. Jumping back to his feet, he gritted his teeth and continued to fight. Pretty soon, his suspicion was confirmed. The enemy seemed to possess an aspect related to blood. His first ability allowed him to ignite it, and the second increased his strength and speed the more he bled. So every time Sonny managed to perform a successful attack, the man grew much more formidable, while Sonny himself had to either dodge the drops of blood or somehow survive another explosion. But he wasn't worried. By now, Sonny had realized that there were 4 types of challengers who tended to do well in this tournament. The first type relied on skill, the second type relied on a powerful aspect, and the third type relied on excellent memories. While the latter two were tricky to deal with, only the first type was really dangerous. The fourth type, of course, was the most deadly. These were fighters who had both formidable skill and powerful aspects, as well as an arsenal of fearsome memories at their disposal. Luckily, there weren't many such people around. This guy was obviously an opponent of the second type, and relied too much on his bizarre aspect. To defeat him, Sonny just had to think of a counter, and in this case, the counter was pretty obvious. Since every wound made his enemy stronger, he just had to finish the bastard off in one strike. And since the warrior in rusted armor neglected to truly develop his technique, that was not that hard to do. After another explosion, Sonny increased the weight of the mantle of the underworld and withstood the shockwave, then made it as light a feather and dashed forward. He understood the essence of the enemy's style already, so it wasn't hard to predict his next move. In fact, Sonny had manipulated the man into doing exactly what he wanted. Once his opponent raised his sword to block a vicious slash, Sonny shifted his weight and suddenly changed the direction of the attack, sidestepping as he pushed his sword forward. The soul serpent scraped against the enemy's sword and slid effortlessly into the visor slit of the rusted helmet. Immediately, Sonny dismissed the shadow and jumped as far back as he could. He was just in time. The body of the man in rusted armor shuddered, and then violently exploded, causing the whole courtyard to tremble. If Sonny was just a tiny bit slower, he would have been pulverized by the explosion, too, and his enemy would have avenged himself from beyond the grave. Well, from beyond being eliminated from the tournament, in this case. What kind of an aspect is that? Phew. I guess this is why Awakened are so dangerous. You just never know what kind of weird crap they are capable of. As the crowd exploded with applause, the voice of the Dreamscape announced. Challenger what? No, wait. Was eliminated. Sonny, however, didn't pay it any attention. Because almost at the same time, the spell whispered into his ear. You have received a memory. A few moments later, Sonny was back in the black void, staring at the fake pattern of radiant strings with a perplexed expression. Ha, that's crazy. He knew, of course, that it was possible to exchange memories in the Dreamscape. This illusion was a mystical space created by a saint's aspect ability, after all, and not an artificial VR simulation. What he had not known, however, was that one could just receive a memory out of nowhere, without the usual requirement of being in physical contact, even if that contact was illusory, with its master. However, if the saint in question was responsible for delivering the rewards, then it sort of made sense. More importantly, though, he had received a memory. His eyes gleamed. Sonny was already eligible for several smaller prizes, most of them in the form of credits or soul shards. He wasn't going to bother receiving them, though, even if there was a way to do so without leaving a paper trail, Sonny didn't know of one. The memories, however, that was an entirely different situation. Summoning the runes, he quickly read. Memory. Memory of ice. Wait. That sounds familiar. Don't I have a memory of fire charm already? Indeed, the memory he received was eerily similar. It was another protective charm. Memory rank. Ascended. Memory tier. Memory type. Charm. Memory description. Even when the sun returned, they shivered and remembered the never-ending winter. Memory enchantments. Bitter cold. Enchantment description. This charm provides the wearer with moderate resistance to cold. A wide smile appeared on his face, hidden behind the black mask. Now that is what I am talking about.